The biggest questions for week 5. Next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm here with Heath Cummings, and we've got the biggest questions for each position in week 5. And we're going to start with, I was waffling on how much to talk about Joe Burrow at this point because he's been so bad, QB 31 in 6-point per pass touchdown leagues, that I wasn't sure if it was actually relevant, but he was started in 63% of CBS fantasy leagues last week, including my 2 0-4 leagues. Love that for me. So I do want to ask, Keith, how many quarterbacks would you start Joe Burrow ahead of? Or to put it in a different way, who are the 3 most surprising names you would start ahead of Joe Burrow in week 5?
Well, I show 5 quarterbacks that I would definitely start Joe Burrow ahead of. And there's four that are not playing, so I guess that would make 9.
You probably want to start him ahead of Justin Herbert this week. Might be the only week that's true the rest of the season.
And Geno Smith. But I would start Jimmy Garoppolo, Zach Wilson, and Joshua Dobbs, all 3 over Joe Burrow this week.
I'm with you on Dobbs. I know Denver's terrible.
Right.
Zach Wilson had like 2 good drives. Like the bar is so low for Zach Wilson that like he had 2 pretty good drives and all of a sudden it's like, is Zach Wilson starting to live up to this is like the narrative now. And it's like, I get it. We want him to be better. We want the Jets to be entertaining. We want Garrett Wilson to be good. I think Zach Wilson's probably still one of the 3 worst quarterbacks in the NFL. I think Joe Burrow, even this version of Joe Burrow, is probably still better than him.
I strongly disagree with that. Zach Wilson has outscored Joe Burrow by a considerable amount this season. In fact, if Joe Burrow had played another game at his current fantasy points per game, Zach Wilson would have still outscored him for the season.
All right. I don't know if I could actually pull the trigger on Zach Wilson ahead of Joe Burrow, but I can't make an argument against it. Let's move on to the running back position, and we're going to talk about Jonathan Taylor a lot this week, at least as long as he's got a chance to play. And sounds like he's going to practice on Wednesday, and they're not ruling him out for Sunday. How are you handling Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss this week?
I was just writing about this, and I'm a little bit gun shy because I was uncertain what Alvin Kamara's role would look like last week, and they just threw it to him 100 times. I'm unsure what Jonathan Taylor's role will look like. As of right now, I believe I have Taylor at RB 35 and Moss at RB 36. It is an awful matchup against the Tennessee Titans. Mm-hmm. They are a very, very good run defense, and I'd be surprised if Taylor comes back and sees the same workload that Kamara saw last week. I'd expect a little bit of a split and for them to ease him in. But if we get to Friday and he's a full participant and they say he's playing, no restrictions, then I'll probably push him up into my top 20.
The thing that's really tough about Jonathan Taylor is we don't know how hurt he was when he went on the PUP list at the start of the season, right? Like my assumption has kind of been that he was like 95%.
Right.
But because of the trades and the contract demands, he just wasn't willing to push it. And now it sounds like he is. And if he's 100%, there might not be any reason to hold him back. So it's going to be a really tough one. I think top 20, if he's cleared to play, is probably where I'm going to go with him. Yep. To move on to wide receiver, and it's kind of a similar situation. We've got Cooper Kupp potentially coming back from IR, and maybe it won't matter this week because we don't know if he's going to play, but how are you viewing Puka Nacua when Cooper Kupp returns?
Yeah, that's one where we've projected Taylor to come back, and I've not projected Kupp to come back yet. So what I'm expecting is that I'll have Puka in that wide receiver 30 range in Kupp's first game back. Now, with 4 teams on a bye and some decent wide receivers, maybe that'd be closer to wide receiver 25 this week. But I would expect, I had a talk on FFT Dynasty with Adam Pfeiffer today, and he was actually saying that he thought the way that Puka gets open, we might just see 27% target share Kupp instead of 32% target share Kupp. So the first week back, it'll probably be Cooper Kupp around wide receiver 10 and Puka around wide receiver 30.
All right. Yeah. This week, it's a bad week for wide receiver because some of the guys on bye, Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, DK Metcalf. We already have Mike Williams out. So It's Amari Cooper. It's a pretty bad week for wide receivers. So I think I'm going to rank both of them top 20 if Cooper Kupp comes back. I also just love the way Matthew Stafford's playing, assuming he plays through this hip injury that he's dealing with, which I think is just a contusion. So he should be good to go. We'll move on to tight end and close out the show with this one. It's a bad position. There's a lot of ways we could go. Nobody's really playing well at tight end except for kind of Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews finally last week. Do you have any hope for Dallas Goedert is the question this week.
Well, the fact that his coach was talking about getting him more involved gives me a little bit of hope, but it's a really bad role right now. The targets are all seemingly within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. They're using him more like a check down option.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't generally get a lot of targets in the red zone because they don't throw very much in the red zone. So he's still a top 15 tight end for me, but he's not top 12 this week.
He's top 12 for me, but that's the thing with Dallas Goedert is the volume's never been great in this offense. It's just he's been a model of efficiency. 10.9 yards per target in 2021, 10.2 in 2022. The average depth of target's actually a little higher this season. He broke a lot of big plays on like those tight end design screens and dump offs that haven't been there. And maybe he's just lost a step, but at 28, I still believe Dallas Goedert's a plus athlete at the tight end position, and all the defensive attention that the other wide receivers have to get. I think we're going to get a big game at some point. And given that like Cole Kmet has had like one good game and Hunter Henry, I don't think has had more than 60 yards in a game yet, I think I'd still go with Goedert over those guys. But admittedly, it's not with a ton of confidence at this point. So that's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll be back tomorrow to talk some start sit questions for week 5. We'll see you then.